Hi, I'm Sandra Wilson. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist who works with misophonia or extreme sound sensitivity. And today is a little video just aimed at people who may be experiencing noise that they cannot escape. So for many sufferers of this dreadful condition, you will feel emotions that are very strong, like rage, absolutely overwhelming panic and anxiety, and even disgust. And some of the sounds that you react to might be the sounds that you have no control over. And I work quite a lot with people who find neighbour noise, the noise from the environment, to be particularly distressing and frustrating. So of course you can't keep moving house all the time. What tends to happen is you move, you realise that the problem actually hasn't gone away. And I have actually spoken to people who have moved into the middle of nowhere, so they never hear any noise at all from neighbours. So what's actually going on? So it could be that you have experienced an issue with noise where you are living. And maybe that noise is something you have absolutely no control over. So let's say, for example, it is noise from your neighbours. So maybe they do a lot of renovation work or DIY. Perhaps you just are unlucky enough to live in a building where sound insulation is not great. And perhaps your neighbours have children, or maybe they just keep hours that don't align with your hours. So maybe, if they work nights or you work nights, and they just make a lot of noise. Now I'll give you a little example. I had a client whose new neighbours moved in. They did a lot of renovation work, and when at the start they did tell her that they were gonna be doing this work, and they always kept her informed. So even though the noise was totally unbearable, she knew when it was going to happen, and she could then just make plans to go out somewhere, or just, I don't know, just do something to take her mind off it. But as the renovation works progressed, the noise got even more extreme. And then as a result of asking them, when's it going to end? Could you, maybe just give me some idea? I think the neighbours started to get, they started to shut down a little. So there was a bit of a communication breakdown. Therein lies the real problem. So as a result of this communication breakdown, this client that I had was not kept informed. So the renovation works ended up going on for 2 years. And the neighbours just stopped letting her know. So one morning she'd get up, and then she saw scaffolders arriving. And then of course it meant she couldn't work from home. So she had to make emergency provisions, which really affected her business and her life and her emotional well-being. And when she did try to speak to the neighbours about just letting her know, keeping her in the loop, they just shut down, and they were defensive and quite unpleasant. So anyway, in that situation, yes, the noise was unbearable. It triggered her deeply because she had a history of trauma, which would have led to her nervous system already feeling unsafe. So when these neighbours were keeping her informed, that was fine. She could work around it. But when it continued beyond the time they said it would take, and then she said something to them, communication broke down. So as a result of communication breaking down and the relationship being sour, and this client being too afraid to ask when it was going to be happening next, that is when the problem just escalated. So every single time she heard even a hammer on the wall, or the sight of a work van out the window the next morning, she would fly into a panic, and she became so upset that she had no choice but to seek help. And that's when I met her. So in a situation where you have lost control, your relationship with your neighbours is virtually ruined or non-existent, and communication has broken down, that is when your nervous system is going to fly into panic and rage. So even if you hear the sound of somebody picking up a power tool or knocking a nail into a wall, your nervous system is going to just make you feel like you have to run away or fight. And it is such a horrible feeling because you literally don't have any control over it. And your mind will be constantly telling you stories. Oh my God, I can't cope with this. I'm going to have to move. I can't go around and say something because I might upset them. Or if you do say something, you're just going to fly off the handle. So you might think in that situation, there's nothing you can do. But don't lose hope. As I've said, I have helped people in this situation, but one of the easiest things, really, once you start to get a handle on what the real problem is, which is loss of control, that's when we can start to make progress. So in this situation, maybe there's a number of things you could do. Yes, you could go out for a walk. Yes, you could arrange to work in the office or somewhere else. Yes, you can learn to adapt. But when you feel a little calmer, that is when you can start to build communication back up with the neighbours, if that is a possibility. So when you're feeling calm, that is when you might formulate something that you could put forward to them, or maybe even using a mediator before you start going down the route of maybe I should contact the local authority, the council or whatever. Because in this situation, they weren't really doing anything wrong. They were just not being very considerate and keeping the lady in the loop. So what can you do if you are in this situation? I'm going to be doing a video that will cover some of the tactics that you could adopt, and I will be back with that tomorrow because otherwise this video is going to be too long. Bye for now.